Thank you so much, Rachel, firstly for having me and for this opportunity for people to understand a little more about animal-assisted therapy, about therapy animals, about pets and how they impact mental health. So therapeutic pause was something that was born out of my PhD work, which is on animal-assisted therapy and neuropsychology. We've been running this project, this initiative for almost 2 years now, but only recently have we got an online presence and made ourselves felt and just to be able to create that awareness about this field. Our work is around basically we work with therapy animals to provide mental health services to people. We also provide a lot of sessions for corporates, for individuals, for groups. We provide training sessions for animals and for humans who want to become therapists or animal assisted therapy practitioners. So that's a little bit about what we do. Just want to be able to create awareness, create opportunities in India, because this field is in a very nascent stage and not many people know about the field or how they can access it or how they can pursue a career in it or incorporate in their practice.
Okay,
so that's something we want to create awareness.
Here. To begin with, Unnati, we wanted to discuss along the lines of how does owning a pet actually enhance mental health, and if yes, in what domains? So if you could just touch upon a couple of domains and maybe even give us examples, that would be great.
Okay, so owning a pet, no matter what, we primarily work with dogs, cats, and horses, but even birds and fishes, all of these have shown to have a very, very big impact on people's mental health. In fact, a lot of studies have shown that people's visits to doctors have reduced after owning a pet as compared to non-pet owners. The amount of money that they've spent on these visits has reduced. They naturally end up feeling calmer, their anxiety is reduced, it reduces feelings of loneliness, isolation, depression. A lot of these aspects of our mental health are impacted by pets, and we also try to incorporate them in a way where it impacts their cognition and their behavior as well. So cognition including changes in memory, in concentration, attention, all of these have been shown to be improved scientifically, not just through my experience, but scientifically as well. It's been shown to improve that a lot in people who own pets.
Okay, and I think I've read a lot of like some information about how emotional intelligence itself develops in younger children by associating with pets or being in close proximity to pets, and that a lot of certain skills develop just from the aspect of touch itself, which is initiated. Let's say a child touches a dog, right? It could be just a feeling of warmth, the proximity of something else which is alive in our vicinity, probably validating how we feel, can actually go a long way in development of emotional intelligence. I think that's one of the concepts that you work with special children or children with special needs, right? Especially those who are non-verbal also. This is a type of interaction which is safe while skills are also developing at the same time. And could you give us an example specifically about how maybe memory is enhanced through association with pets?
All right. So based on everything that you've said so far, there are 2 or 3 things that come to mind. One is that having a pet around you or indulging in activities with that pet around you itself increases motivation in people by a large amount. So we've had people who've not been motivated to do any tasks, even if some of their best friends or family members tell them to. But the minute you get a pet involved, you try to make that activity revolving around the pet, you will see their motivation levels just shoot up and them wanting to, engage in those activities. So motivation is one big part. You mentioned touch. One very interesting part of research and practice that I like mentioning all the time is how oxytocin in our body is released when there's positive physical contact. So positive physical contact, meaning the human and the animal, they actually desire that physical contact and want to be in physical proximity to one another. That would count as a positive physical contact. And once you do that, touch is one of the best ways to release oxytocin in your body. And of course, skin being the largest organ of our body, the minute you're petting a dog, cuddling a dog, and the dog is also asking for more and enjoying that company, it releases oxytocin not only in us but in the dog as well. So oxytocin itself has so many varied benefits, so many varied branches in the brain, and impacts other neurotransmitters also, which ends up helping us on various aspects related to cognition, related to emotion, and plays a huge role on our overall health and well-being.
Okay. And does it work any differently for younger children as opposed to, say, adults, or is it the same? Like, for
So
example,
it
having
works.
a pet who is, which is frolicking around us, there's a lot of playfulness. So in play, there is also this humor and this happiness, right? So does it work the same for children as well as adults?
Yes, it does benefit both children and adults. So what we recommend is a different kind of pet depending on the needs of the person.
Okay.
So whenever we've had groups of people where the people aren't really interactive or they don't speak to each other much, in those cases, we would absolutely recommend a dog that's very lively, very energetic, frolicking around like you mentioned. Those people will really benefit from that. But in groups that or in families where everyone's already very high on energy, that's where something a little more calming is going to be recommended for them. So it does depend on the needs of the person, but works perfectly well with people of all ages. We even have seen so much work done on elderly people. We've seen work done with babies and children, toddlers, and it's just worked wonders for all ages.
So especially, I think having a pet also initiates the sense of responsibility, right? Especially in younger people as well. In fact, looking at the couple of entries we have had on what being a pet owner has actually taught them, a lot of them have emphasized on the sense of responsibility, saying that, you know, this is probably one of the only reasons I would get up in the morning to take my dog out for a walk or to have a routine, because I need to feed the dogs at a certain time in the day. And some families have actually bought a pet, giving that sense of responsibility to the child, saying, hey, you wanted the pet, so you need to take charge of it. And they actually do it. So it creates a sense of routine and responsibility and structure for youngsters as well, right? I mean, all pet owners in itself. So we've spoken a little about cognition. You also spoke specifically on memory and there's responsibility, there's structure, routine, and emotional intelligence as well. But specifically related to, say, depression or anxiety or relieving stress. How does this relate?
All right. So, whenever somebody, so let's talk about, say, depression, for example, like you mentioned, the person starts to isolate themselves. They start to not indulge in leisure activities as much. They don't feel a lot of interest or motivation to do things. That's where the whole routine that you mentioned about the pet and the presence of the pet plays a huge, huge role, because they know as a part of pet care, they have to be, they have to take up those activities, take the dog out for a walk. Being able to go outdoors and go for that walk itself starts having very positive implications for you. The minute they are out with their pet, it forces them to, to talk to people who are then all, over the pet and saying, what is this dog? And, what's its name? And how do I, can we pet it? And one major aspect in that sense is that the focus moves away from them and their problems. So when I'm going outside, I will be worried about what is this person going to think about me? And I'm so upset. But the minute I take the dog outside, the focus is moved away from me and my problems to an external source, which tends to give the person a self-monitored control over their, frustrations, their anxieties, and the feelings of being sad and low as well. So having that external focus is very, very helpful, especially a focus that is so positive, that will love you no matter how low you are, that will just be around you to, lift your spirits up. And dogs have this special sense of smell. They have an extra organ that humans don't, which helps them smell very, very well. And even slightest changes of chemicals in your body, say for example, a lot of chemicals are impacted in your body when you have depression as well. They can sense this. In fact, they can even sense 1/8 of a change of facial expression, which probably your parents or family members won't be able to, but your dogs can recognize these changes in you. And that's how a lot of them react when you are upset, because they know something's wrong and they're there to, engage with you. So a lot of these ways, pets can actually help these people get through such difficult phases.
Okay. And so right now, given the fact that we are going through a lockdown, and definitely a lot of people are reaching out and talking about the difficulties that they are going through as humans. Do you think that the lockdown has affected the pets also in any way?
Oh, absolutely. I've had so many complaints of, pets developing such bad habits. I'm so sure the pets are also tired of the humans being there all the time. So yes, of course, initially some of them did enjoy, having the human around longer for all their pets and cuddles. And I think now they are also wondering when everyone's going to start going back to work so that they can have some alone time. So pets are definitely impacted because they do require a lot of time where they can be by themselves. Humans, when they're at home, they tend to do things like, when the puppy is napping or the dog is napping, they'll want to take pictures or wake it up or put it in a very cute position, or just want to, or feel like, my dog might be bored, so let's engage them in activities, which is a good thing. But dogs require a large amount of sleep as well. They require at least, it depends on which breed and which dog, but at least about 12 hours, which they won't get, which they usually complete when humans go to work. But now that they're not, the dogs end up staying up a lot. Their sleep cycles are ruined. They go out less often. They're less exercised. So a lot of complaints have come in where dogs have started developing very unhealthy habits, like chewing on furniture or barking at times they used to not bark earlier. So yeah, they are quite badly affected by the lockdown as well.
So sleep cycles disrupted for both the humans as well as the pets.
Absolutely.
And, this is seen in both the groups as well. So is there something that we could do as the people could do as pet owners to improve this period during lockdown for their pets?
Absolutely. So some things that we highly recommend are following the routine that they had before the lockdown. It's very, very important because dogs work strictly according to routines. And if that routine is followed, the dog will not misbehave as much as they do. So humans tend to now sleep in, late. They sleep late at night. That's why they sleep in the morning and don't wake up on time. So probably the schedule for the dog is also, or any of the other pets that they are having, little ones also like hamsters or guinea pigs, their routines are disturbed a lot. And so following that routine is something that will really, really help. If the dog is acting up, like if you're having these chewing on furniture habits developing now, or if you're seeing them bark, you need to see why this is happening. What is the event that occurred just before them behaving in this way? Because there could be underlying anxiety. The dog could be trying to communicate something to you. Maybe they're trying to seek attention from you. Maybe they're trying to tell you about some kind of bodily issues. So there are a lot of nerve endings in the dog's mouth. It stimulates them if they are chewing on something. And when they're doing that, by that act, it helps them calm down as well. So it's important to figure out what is happening, just at what point of time is the dog behaving negatively. And instead of punishing the dog for that, they're supposed to use positive reinforcements, the concept of positive reinforcement, to bring about these changes. So firstly, they have to try to recognize what is wrong and try to eliminate those aspects so that the behavior doesn't occur. In case it is, one of the best things to do is just move them away from whatever they're doing to what you want them to focus on. So for example, if my dog is stressed and he's chewing on my furniture, I can show him a treat or I can show him a toy and engage him in something else at a different spot, so that he now associates the feeling of anxiety with going to that spot and feeling calm, rather than chewing on the furniture and feeling calm. So you need to show them what they're supposed to do rather than tell them what they're not supposed to do, because if they are stressed, you're just going to end up stressing them more by shouting at them or punishing them. It most of the times just doesn't work by punishing them.
So I think a lot of what you're talking also, bears close resemblance to the process of, conditioning and learning that we talk about with humans itself, right? And
Absolutely.
how instead of punishing children for what they are doing wrong, you instead show them what they need to do right and then reward them for it. So that kind of
Absolutely.
that learned behavior. Um, so due to the lockdown, and you mentioned we are not able to go out also that much, right? You mentioned that routines have changed. Maybe earlier they used to go for a walk or a run with their pets at certain times during the day. Now that is something which may not be entirely possible right now. So is there something that we could do to entertain the pets as well? Because people who are in lockdown also are continuing to work, right? So the pets are also used to seeing their owners around all the time, and they might feel playful, but the owners are also engaged in work throughout the day, and the pets might therefore feel bored in their awake time. What is
Mhm.
something that we could do for that?
So a few things. So when we're talking about pets here, I'll try to focus a little more on dogs, because there are, I think, a large number of our viewers must be focusing on dogs over other pets. But a lot of these activities can be transferable to cats and the smaller ones like hamsters and guinea pigs. But they need to determine which one will work for their pet. But let's focus on dogs as of now. One way to keep them engaged and help them utilize their energy even without going outside is to engage their sense of smell. So basically engaging their all their senses for doing these activities. Some of the things that people can do is hide treats all around the house. So maybe shut your dog in the room for 5 minutes with another human or anywhere they're comfortable, and take small treats that they really like and they will be motivated to approach, and hide them in different spots around the house, and then open the dog up, because then using the sense of smell, trying to find where the treat is, and then depending on how well your dog is performing the first time, you can increase or decrease the difficulty levels. So some dogs are very good at sniffing it out. For them, you might have to make it a little more difficult by maybe hiding it under a pillow and stuff like that, where they have to physically push the pillow away to reach that treat. So this itself will keep them engaged for easily about half an hour or so. And this mental stimulation itself exerts a lot of energy, which will definitely tire the dogs out to be able to rest, because their energy is not being able to be expended by their walks or the runs. Some other ways could include like taking, so if you don't have a lot of space in your house and you don't know where all to hide it and it's very small, the dog can figure it out. Even taking a sheet or a blanket that you're okay with sharing with the dog, have multiple folds in it, and within each fold you can hide these treats. If you want to increase complexity levels for very intelligent dogs, you can use a piece of cloth, hide treats in it, put it in a box, put some more treats, hide that box in another box. So the dog is then engaged in pulling the box apart and finding the treats from it, and in different ways to stimulate themselves and be able to reach their target. One or two things that also help are, if you have any railings or poles or maybe a firm bed, tying a sheet or a rope around it, and towards the end you can tie one of their favorite toys. A lot of energy can also be expended by getting them to tug on those toys, and they won't be able to pull it apart because it will be tied up to something firm. So as I said earlier, because their mouth will be involved in pulling or tugging on that toy, it again stimulates all those nerves that are very important to help the dog calm down, and as well as at the same time expend that energy while being involved in these activities.
In fact, I think, Unnati, some of the write-ups that have come to us, we've had a lot of viewers also talk about cats as well as fish, right? And research also shows that the presence of these animals as well, even fish, they could be inside
Absolutely.
a tank, but just the presence of that pet in the room can have a very relieving experience on the individual, right? Of
True.
course, some pets required more responsibility on your behalf or more entertainment from your behalf, and more structure. Some of them required more engagement from your side, but
Okay.
overall, irrespective of which pet it is, they definitely have some influence, positive influence on mental health. Right. So,
Absolutely.
with that note, could you explain to us what are animal assisted interventions?
Okay. So before I explain animal assisted interventions, the point you mentioned about fish being helpful,
Yes.
I get a lot of questions about what animals can be incorporated when we're talking about mental health. And the answer is almost all of them, as long as you keep wildlife out of it. However, there are people known in US who also incorporate snakes and other reptiles. They
Okay.
incorporate some amount of wildlife also, and that has shown a lot of positive impact too. And in fact, fish tanks and aquariums are extremely useful for people with coronary conditions or heart conditions and cardiovascular conditions. These are things that are majorly impacted when it comes to fish. For animal assisted intervention is actually an umbrella term. It basically means any intervention that has an animal which is incorporated in those particular activities. Under animal assisted interventions, we have multiple fields like animal assisted therapy, animal assisted activities, education, research, a lot of these things, animal assisted counseling, a lot of these things, depending on your specialization, will come under animal assisted intervention. So a clinical practitioner or maybe somebody who comes from some kind of a healthcare background, so it can be a physiologist, it can be a doctor, speech therapist, all of them can practice animal assisted therapy as long as they are certified for practicing animal assisted therapy and incorporate animals into their practice. So depending on what field you are in, the role of the animal will change accordingly. But when it comes to animal assisted education or maybe research, you don't necessarily need to have a healthcare background. For education, you'll need some kind of background and knowledge in education, and then you're incorporating a trained animal into your educational facilities or organizations. Similarly, for research, it will require a research background.
Okay.
So animal assisted interventions, umbrella term, with all of these that fall under it.
And you use animals in therapy with a wide range of individuals, right, from different age groups. In fact, I think
That's right.
we also use animals to work with children who have attention deficits, hyperactivity, and autism. A lot of
Absolutely.
researchers work with children who are nonverbal, who
Mm-hmm.
in the process of trying to converse or talk or direct the dog, um, that actually is a huge motivating factor itself, and there is
Absolutely.
a lot of unconditional love from the other end, right? Unlike parents or teachers who could have a deadline or expectations, that's not there when you're working in the context of an animal. And even with older individuals who have a pet, it helps a lot with dealing with the factor of loneliness itself, right?
Correct.
People who are staying alone. In fact, if you actually take a look at some of the write-ups, it also has to do with pets who are no more, right? That
Mm-hmm.
individuals have had a lot of very close emotional attachments to, and they've spoken about concepts like loyalty and friendship, and somebody they could talk to at the end of a tiring day, even if they would not get a response, they would get maybe a jolly nip on the hand, but that's something that is very reinforcing, right? So there's a lot of positivity around animals itself. We can't say more with one than the other, but just universally, it has such a positive influence on mental health. And you also mentioned that there's no restriction on what animals can have the therapeutic influence on their owners. Um,
Absolutely.
in fact, I think we had one question coming in which said, um, that this person is going through a really difficult time at home and is not able to get validation from people in the same family. So would getting a pet actually help how she feels? Because asking parents for help is not actually going anywhere. So would this be another way in which she could approach, but asking for a pet or spending time with animals, would that actually make her feel better? Is something that she's
Um, I think spending time with pets, so maybe a friend's pet or and maybe there are a lot of these experience centers where you can go spend time with farm animals or somebody who might have a pet. That can really help her. But this being a reason for getting a pet might not be the best reason in the interest of the pet itself, to come into a household because of these particular reasons. Because in case the condition that she is in worsens, or god forbid if it worsens, it could negatively impact the pet as well. So the pet would have just newly come into their lives. It will take some time for it to be trained, for it to be adjusted, and she will not see those immediate results from these pets, from the pet that she's bringing in. So that would probably further demotivate her or get her to think that it's not useful. Even though I thought it's useful, it's not, because it will take some time for the pet to adjust before she can engage with it in a very meaningful way.
okay?
So
Even
considering
so you're saying that it cannot replace therapy and it cannot be the sole reason to make you feel better, but in general, while it does have a positive influence, that's not the only thing that you do. And especially you need to be ready. In fact, some of the viewers have written in saying that it's not just about how they can contribute to our mental health, but we also should be prepared to take that huge responsibility and make sure that they are fed on time and that we keep them happy and satisfied and we're able to engage them and we give them a good environment to stay, right? So it's not like they are verbal and could and have a list of requirements that they come with, like a list saying, are you able to provide? But it works both ways, right? So it's like when we say, we can say like, have a happy pet and then you also have a happy life. So you should be ready, mentally ready also to take that responsibility. So it goes both ways. Anything you want to add, Unnati, as a takeaway to some of our viewers here who are all pet owners?
I think I'll just speak about one small anecdote which can show the kind of impact that these pets have on humans.
Okay.
Earlier you were mentioning about how children can confide or learn, or non-verbal children can learn how to be more verbal or be able to read better, be able to start speaking better in the presence of these animals, because they are very non-judgmental and accepting no matter what mistakes you make. And when humans are there, no matter how much we say that, okay, I will not make a sad or a disappointed face, there are expressions that change when you're with the child. But with dogs or with some animals, they're completely purely non-judgmental. This is an anecdote from a collaborator, in fact, and she has very widely even published this particular anecdote, where there was a child who was who just refused to speak about the issues that they're having, but they were having a lot of troubles at school as well. And the school was not ready to continue keeping them, and they were just not ready to open up at all, and they kept going to different therapists, to psychiatrists and psychologists and a variety of therapists. And as a last resort, they came to this collaborator of mine, and she said that in the first session, the child just sat there and observed, and she has a lot of animals with her. So she has cats, dogs, birds, and a couple of hamsters here and there. So the child just sat and observed her, indulging with the animals, petting them. And the next session onwards, he started speaking. He had not spoken for a couple of years to anyone, and he started speaking about his issues, and he started working through them, and they had a very, very successful series of sessions. And when they drew towards the end, when most of the issues had been dealt with, they actually went back and asked the child about why the child had opened up. And that's when the child revealed that in the past, I didn't feel like I could trust anybody to tell them about what I was going through. But when I saw her the way she interacted with the animals and the way these animals could trust her, fall in her arms, sit with her, be with her, the way they trusted her is what made me feel that I could also speak up and, trust her in that manner. So even if it's not something you directly observe, a lot of us know the direct implications when we're involved in activities or, engaging with the animal, but there are so many of these indirect ways in which they impact us that we are not physically aware of, and we can't be physically aware of. It's something that happens internally, and it's only when somebody reflects upon it do you know how much you've been impacted by these animals in your life. So
really true.
That's something.
Story to leave us with, Unnati. Thank you so much. We would definitely have all the takeaways from the session uploaded on the page, on both our pages as well. You could follow Therapeutic Pause as well as reach out to Rachel on Instagram. This video, you could share it to all the other pet owners as well so they can understand the learning, connect or relate with it. Like Unnati rightfully said, it's only during times when we reflect back do we understand how much influence they've actually had in our lives. Thank you so much, Unnati, again for joining us.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for having me.
You're like a free bird.